Now we will discuss impairments of language and cognition. A cognitive linguistic impairment can often result from a right brain injury. This does not directly affect the language area of the brain, but can affect attention, memory, problem solving, and interpretive language, which in turn affect communicative abilities. So we know that one area which is affected or impairment in one ability might affect the other. For example, because language, cognitive abilities, attention, memory, they overlap, therefore impairment in language and cognitive functions might arise as side effects of impaired attention and memory. Some of the other difficulties in language, or you can say language function, can stem from impaired motor functions. So there is a possibility that all those areas which overlap, if one is affected or if one is impaired, the others might get affected and might become impaired as well. A close relationship exists between language and cognition. Now we all know that there is a relationship, and the relationship is very strong in terms of language and cognition, because language has to be processed through the cognitive processes. Therefore, there is a notion that there is a close relationship that exists between language and cognition has to be considered, because it has generally been supported by studies of individuals with Down syndrome reviewed by Rosenberg. So these are the studies which were actually conducted on the individuals with Down syndrome. Now, these individuals tend to have language delays that are proportionate to the severity of their cognitive disability. However, in certain individuals, there can be significant discrepancies between the level of cognitive functioning and the level of linguistic functioning. Some individuals display cognitive skills that are advanced relative to the individual's linguistic skills. Now, we have a study conducted by Curtis in 1981, which contrasts the language development of mentally retarded children with that of Jeannie, who is socially deprived of any interaction and communication. The children who were mentally retarded tended to produce sentences with appropriate and sometimes complex syntax, but with relatively rudimentary, which is a very basic or elementary meaning. Now, here we have to understand the case of Jeannie, that although Jeannie's linguistic skills were rudimentary, her cognitive development appeared to be more age appropriate. And now, if this is so, this would provide evidence against the thesis that cognition is sufficient for language. The hypothesis that cognition is necessary for language has not fared much better, and Bluchy et al., they worked on this particular aspect and have studied individuals with Williams syndrome. Williams syndrome, a rare disorder that is characterized by an elfin-like facial appearance, mental retardation, and cardiac defects. Now, despite their cognitive impairment, these individuals' syntactic skills were found to be largely intact. For example, they display good comprehension of passive sentences and an MLU, which is mean length utterance, greater than expected for their mental age. The failure to find syntactic delay in individuals with Williams syndrome is not consistent with the notion that cognition is necessary for language. So this is another assumption that has been highlighted with regard to Williams syndromes. There have been case studies in which individuals with significant cognitive impairments demonstrate unexpected language abilities. For example, Cromer discusses a case of adolescents with what has been called chatterbox syndrome. Now, a condition in which an individual talks continuously, despite considerable deficit on standardized intelligence tests. This young woman displayed fluent language with a keen understanding of various grammatical constructions such as passives and relative clauses. So here we have a contrasting results as far as the syntactic expression is concerned and as well as the impaired language abilities are concerned. So we have one where we have Williams syndrome and the other where is the chatterbox syndrome, where the difference of results have been proposed by different researchers. To conclude, it has been observed that in certain individuals there are dissociation between language and cognition and cognitive development. Although it is generally associated with language development, may not be either necessary nor sufficient for it.